Stormfront RK equals Part 6 RK equals Dry Dock Sigma 3 KDY Orbital Array Kuat. Ahsoka used the first opportunity she got to get away from Zash, even if the reprieve offered was going to be temporarily. Her salvation came in the form of a call from her people back on Coruscant, who were still securing and investigating the primary Republic R&D facility on the planet. While waiting for additional information, Ahsoka went to the closest viewport overlooking Kuat and marveled at the ring station surrounding the planet. She stood within the manifestation of KDY's power, the heart of their industrial might. The ring surrounding Kuat had multiple purposes. It provided secure docking points for resources, hundreds protected docks where ship could either be repaired or constructed, and as importantly, the gargantuan facility was the first layer of Kuat's planetary defense. The KDY array could project a fortress shield that not only protected the station but the planet it orbited, and when combined with the Quati fleet, the planetary shields and other defensive emplacements, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that this was the best protected place in the galaxy. That thought dampened Ahsoka's mood. All that hardware, the millions of people crewing and servicing it, all ground forces Kuat had, they didn't prevent Zash from bringing Anara Kuat to her knees. It was a sobering and terrifying thought. Only now Ahsoka was beginning to see that without the Jedi Order as a factor, there were few precious things that could give the Sith pause. And she was one of the people who would oppose them. For the people who relied upon her not to waste their lives, for the Republic and its citizens who were abandoned by the other Jedi. She could even see why the Council was so afraid of the Sith and understand why they went for a coup. Zash and what she did was a good enough reason. It was just that, Ahsoka wasn't ready to pay the price of opposing the Sith at this time, because even if she was uncomfortable with their methods, they appeared to be among the precious few whose actions would benefit the Republic's citizens as a whole, even if that was merely a nice side effect as far as they were concerned. The Jedi, the sworn guardians of the Republic. Too many of her friends and mentors were all too eager to sacrifice the ordinary people and whole worlds in order to oppose the Sith. For all Ahsoka knew, the Council might even be right, however that wasn't a path she could follow. It wasn't for her, nor the other Jedi, to decide who must be sacrificed in order to pursue their vendetta against the Sith. If they were just risking themselves, that would be one thing. Their actions directly leading to the fall of Corellia and all the chaos, strife and tragedies that followed? That was a step too far. It was a terrible time to live in, when Ahsoka lately found more in common with the Sith than the Jedi who raised her. Her comm pinged and she was glad for the distraction it offered. Lately, being left with her own thoughts was downright depressing. "You've got more details for me, Captain?" Ahsoka smiled when she saw the face of one of her subordinates. "We finally cracked another layer of encryption." The young captain scowled. "You're looking for Project Space Angel, ma'am." Solemn worked on creating a synthetic life form as a super-military droid to be installed in capital ships. The first proof of concept, though with R&D in mind, is already installed and operation in this facility. The captain looked almost faint. "It appears to have the provisional approval of both Generals Kenobi and Vale, so until it goes rogue we're to do nothing about it." "What am I going to deal with here, Mike?" Ahsoka asked. "At least one Victory Star destroyer that should be almost complete with the system installed but supposedly not yet operational. From the data we have so far, it's not clear if it's a single unit as a proof of concept or we're looking for others installed for at least a whole battle group. I really need to speak with Vale." "Strangle the damn fool," Ahsoka grumbled. "Capabilities of those things? Should I expect to get blown up along with this whole section of the array? There's no way to know how crazy those boffins over there are. I wouldn't have given a droid, much less some kind of fancy new Super One, access to weaponry, propulsion, life support or gravity." Solemn and his friends, however. The captain shrugged helplessly. That idiot wanted to experiment on Zash of all people. The only reason he was still alive was that the Sith had other things to worry about at the time and couldn't give him the attention he deserved. Solemn should be hoping to end in some deep dark hole, and after that everyone forgets he was there after throwing away the key. Otherwise Ahsoka didn't want to think what might happen to the fool. I'll call security and coordinate with the Quati fleet just in case then. Ahsoka decided. Keep the good work and make sure our boys and girls stay out of trouble. I'll be back as soon as I can. Will do, Mom. Keep safe. The captain saluted and cut the channel. Super droids in ships. What else was he working on? Super Sith because we don't have enough of those? Ahsoka muttered darkly. A few calls later, one to Zash so Anara Kuat could facilitate everyone moving with haste befitting the mess they might all be stuck into. Ahsoka walked into the nearby dock where thousands of people and tens of thousands of droids of all sizes worked on an almost complete victory. 2 platoons of fully kitted out local security marched behind her, and she knew that at least a Venator squadron was making its way to blockade this section of the array just in case. Looking at the ship, which was more than a kilometer long and hundreds of meters thick at the tallest section, Ahsoka wondered how in the name of the Force she was supposed to find out where that supercomputer was hidden. The damn thing could be massive and still it could take them days or longer to even get close. At least some of the engineers working of the ship should know, right? We need to find the one responsible for this project and start asking questions. Ahsoka decided. That at least was easy. The woman in charge headed their way once their presence caused enough commotion to gain her attention. She was just old enough to be Ahsoka's mother and with her short red hair looked like a younger version of Zash, which was extremely creepy. The last thing the galaxy needed was a second Zash. Ah, you mean the new main computer. The Quati woman beamed at Ahsoka once she explained what they were there to inspect. She's plugged in and fully operational. She's blowing through all the tests so far. It's incredible. If everything pans out, we'll be able to reduce the crew by a third, and this is with more or less standard victory configuration. If we go with even more automation, we can cut the crew by at least half. The engineer began bouncing on her feet in excitement. She had no idea why Ahsoka looked as if she just bit into something rotten, nor the reason the security people behind her suddenly felt very apprehensive. RK equals Part 7 RK equals Republic Cruiser Victory Dry Dock Sigma 3 KDY Orbital Array Kuat. Walking into the belly of the beast was initially underwhelming. All over the place they could see open bulkheads, an inordinate quantity of cabling and equipment being slotted into place even if on the outside the ship appeared almost complete. The large corridors were chock full with people, droids and crates with supplies and machinery awaiting installation. Ahsoka expected something in that vein. What she found disturbing was the way Nalia Sears, the chief engineer responsible for the victory, waxed lyrical about the super droid plugged into the ship. The exited explanation how this was the namesake of the class flagship that got destroyed above Durs and was expected to end up being at least as distinguished as its namesake, didn't help. What clinched things for Ahsoka was when they stepped through an invisible line and a hollow image of a youngish human woman came into being besides Nalia. She looked very chipper, and at a first glance, one would be convinced that this was a human, not a machine. We have guests, I see, Nal. Care to introduce us? The droid's avatar leaned forward as if to peer at Ahsoka and even more uncomfortably feeling security troopers accompanying her. She sounded awfully happy to see them too. Colonel Tano from the GAR, those behind us are array security. They're very interested in meeting you. Do we finally have green light to build more just like Vicky here? Sears asked excitedly. I won't go that far yet, Ahsoka stammered at the insane question. Nal, I don't think she likes me. The droid sulked. That thing wasn't right. Who in their right mind put it into a fully fledged capital ship? Ahsoka looked at Engineer Sears, who was sulking too, thought about that madman Solemn, and she had her answer. It was Vale's idea too, which only made everything that much worse. She rubbed her forehead, wondering how to handle this without ending up with hundreds or even thousands of people either suffocated, turned into paste from overloaded gravity generators, vaporized by the Guardian system, or worse. Ever since she learned about this, all kinds of horror scenarios ran through her mind, each worse than the previous one. What's not to like? Vicky and her sisters will change the course of this war once we have enough of them. There was not a hint of a doubt in Seer's voice. She sounded proud of herself and the unhinged droid. The hologram beamed at the praise and her head bobbed up and down as she nodded. Of course you can't see how this can concern people. Ahsoka's eyes twitched in frustration. This all was Vale's idea, wasn't it? That's my understanding too. He's like my stepdad or something. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't exist. You know him, right? Tell me about him, please. The droid fixed its attention on Ahsoka. What? Just what? She stared at the hologram. Vicky's kinda excitable and she's been very bored stuck in here. She can't wait for her crew and shake-up cruise. Sears confided. As if anyone was insane enough to want a crazy droid plugged in their ship. Ahsoka's comm beeped. She looked at it in irritation, however she had to answer. That tone was reserved from transmissions from command. She schooled her expression in one of polite professionalism and answered. Speak about the devil or the Sith in this case. Colonel Tano. Vale in all his civi glory grinned at her. Congratulations of graduating with distinction and about your promotion. From what I heard, they were both richly deserved. General, sir. The time spent at Anaxes kicked in. Ahsoka stood straight like a pole and gave as much of a textbook salute as possible while her superior spoke to her through a comm built in the left arm guard of her armor. There was approval in Vale's eyes as he sharply returned her salute. At ease, Colonel. Zash just informed me you've made an interesting discovery. That's one way to put it, sir. Ahsoka's smile was all teeth. What was that madman thinking, wanting to build super droids? Tell me all about it. Being stuck away from the core, I've been unable to keep abreast with certain projects being vital to Republic security. It's operational. Ahsoka sent an accusing glare at the Sith, who nodded approvingly. That's what I want to hear. Can you patch her in? I would love to meet her. Her? Ahsoka asked faintly. I was under the impression that the artificial sentience of the ship would be female. Am I mistaken? I am female, thank you very much. The droid's avatar moved, or at least the holo projectors built in the corridor gave it such an impression until it walked into Ahsoka Comm's camera range. General Vale, sir, it's an honor. The droid gushed. I am Prototype Artificial Sentience VK-01, Victoria, assigned to Republic Cruiser Victory, hull number VK-31. It's good to meet you, Victoria. Vale sounded genuine too. Ahsoka looked from the general to the unhinged droid and back. What was wrong with those two? Or better yet, what wasn't wrong with them? I'm looking forward to seeing you in action. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm calling. If your hull is complete and you're operational on time, I would want to have you along when we go liberate Mandalore. The droid's avatar began bouncing just like Sears did earlier, and Ahsoka wondered who was a worse influence on whom among those two. General, are you sure that would be a good idea? Ahsoka tried to be the lonely voice of reason. I can assure you that if we have 2 to 3 more weeks, we'll have Vicky here ready and raring to go. Sears promised. That's excellent. While I would love to go earlier, it would be at least a month before we can gather an appropriate fleet to send to Mandalore. Can you be at Tanab within 3 to 4 weeks? I can find a battle-tested and experienced crew for you. Really? The droid exclaimed. I mean, I would be honored, General Vale, sir. The droid shook itself up and stood at attention. She's a bit excitable. It's mostly the boredom and being stuck in the dock since awakening. She really doesn't like being cooped in inside. I'm a warship. I was made to fly and smite the Republic's enemies. That's the spirit. Vale nodded in approval and Ahsoka despaired. In fact, I think I would personally escort your future captain and some of your officers and crew to Kuat and come meet you in person. Ahsoka didn't know what she was more afraid of, Vale facilitating the creation of more droids like this, Victoria, or him and Zash meeting and plotting together. She even pitied Anara Kuat, who would have to deal with them both, at least until it dawned on her that she would be in the middle of it too. Stormfront =RK Part 8 =RK Mandalorian Embassy, Coruscant. For a third day in a row, Bo-Katan was at the training area, vexing her vexation at droids, dummies and anyone dumb enough to want to spar with her. Her implants were settling in nicely and all that was left on that front was to get fully accustomed to them and her new limits, and that was taking longer than anticipated. 2 of her sparring partners were still recovering in the med bay, and she had lost count of things he had accidentally broken when her attention slipped or she lost control of her temper. Her frustration was the primary reason for any and all accidents happening lately. While Bo-Katan was glad that her husband had survived, the fact that she was apparently quite down his priority list was simply infuriating. It's been days now since he got back in Republic space and thus in range of the holonet. Did he call? Ask about her? The first time she heard he was in fact alive was when he appeared on the news when speaking with the Senate. Seeing what happened, it became painfully obvious that both her sister and Kenobi knew of Del-Qatar's survival and none of them deigned to tell her. That little fact did wonders for her mood. As a consequence, everyone in the embassy learned to avoid her, though it took a few people a sparring match where they served as a punching bag and stress relief. That's how Bo-Katan ended up alone in the training area, with all sparing droids in severe need of maintenance or replacements, most dummies shot up to pieces, the punching bags torn by cybernetics-enhanced kicks and punches. Yet none of that really helped her mood. Bo-Katan emptied her blaster's power cell into a shielded target and fished for a spare when someone cleared their throat behind her. You look like you need a good fight or to get laid, preferably, both. She whirled around to face the intruder who just volunteered to be her next punching bag before his voice could properly register. Her husband was right there, grinning at her like an idiot. He wore his Mandalorian armor, the same one he had when they got married. You. Bo-Katan snapped. Me? That infuriating cheerful grin didn't waver. She put her blaster on its magnetic clamp and stalked angrily at her husband. What were you thinking? Were you thinking at all? Bo-Katan popped his armored chest. Why do people keep asking me similar things? Del-Qatar exclaimed. She gave him an exasperated look. As if it wasn't obvious. You go out to have all the fun, then you go get yourself burned to a crisp on the holonet so the whole galaxy could see, and when you somehow survive, you don't bother inform your wife, so I had to learn it from the news. Bo-Katan snapped. There were mitigating circumstances. He tried to defend himself. Like what? As if she really cared. I gave it more than even odds that upon my return your sister and Obi-Wan would order my arrest or even issue a kill order over Bothawui. Keeping myself out of contact seemed the best idea until I knew what way they were going to jump. Bo-Katan opened her mouth to snap at him, then his words fully registered. No way Satine would have done something like that. Your Mandalore, not to mention my husband. I also destroyed a whole world, one that was Republic-aligned until they betrayed us. Del-Qatar reasonably pointed out. Your sister is kinda an idealist. He added. She got a solid dose of realism lately. Bo-Katan felt compelled to defend Satine. She really got better after marrying. Who would have thought that a Jedi of all people would be good for her? I know that, now. The way she became the Chancellor wasn't a clue enough? Bo-Katan snarked. I'm still unclear on the details about how that came to be. She grumbled in frustration and had to remind herself that unlike her, Del-Qatar had been stuck on the rim for the last few months, fighting the good fight and making his legend grow while she had to be put back together and was relegated to merely training her new abilities. She was envious of her husband and all the fun he got to have, damn it all. Bo-Katan was still fuming when Del-Qatar's foolish smile slid from his face and all she could see was an expression of relief. It's good to see you're all right. He trailed off and walked closer to her. He removed his right armored glove and gently cupped her face. It will take more than a crazy Jedi to put me down. Bo-Katan boasted. And phantom pain gripped her torso, trailing the injuries Windu caused when he crushed her as if she was no more dangerous than a bug. He's a dead man walking. Del-Qatar growled. Good. Bo-Katan nodded. He pulled her closer and their lips slammed together. Equals RK equals. In the middle of the training area, really, Bo? Satine stared exasperated at her sister. At least now she had some strategic pieces of her armor back on hiding the important parts. Envious? You've been quite busy for a long time now. Bo-Katan grumbled at her sister. The angry makeup sex had been great at least until the Chancellor and her security detail barged in without knocking. For a moment they both thought that her husband might overreact over the interruption. He did levitate the clones who barged in first, and it was altogether a very close call. Madam Chancellor, your timing leaves something to be desired. If her husband felt any more frustration, he didn't let it show in his tone. I can say the same about you too. Satine growled. I could have walked in here with a few senators, who by the way are waiting outside, spoil sport. Bo-Katan grumbled. Couldn't this wait? She had a lot of frustrations to work through. Blame your husband and his thoughtful actions on the rim. Satine responded glibly. Why would senators want to meet me? I had the impression that most would prefer to be at least 1,000 light years away from me. Others seem to be your fans. Bo-Katan added. She did watch the live broadcast from the Senate and the media storm that followed. It was most educational, not to mention mildly entertaining. After that, and failing to contact her sister of Kenobi, who were apparently too busy keeping the Republic from burning down around their ears, she had retired to the training area. I somehow doubt that those are the ones you brought to meet me. Delcatar addressed her sister. No, those are our allies, or at least were until I had to publicly support you over Bothoi. What did you think you were doing? Satine glared accusingly at Delcatar. What I had to in order to win. Satine grimaced and rubbed her temples. At that rate there won't be much of a galaxy left when this is all over. I would take that bargain if it means we will be alive when the dust settles, even if it is less than ideal. Delcatar shrugged unapologetically. Get yourselves presentable and meet me in the ambassador office. It's the most secure part of the building. RK equals. Part 9. RK equals. Ambassador office. Mandalorian embassy. Coruscant. My sister-in-law managed to lose all goodwill she won herself by not sicking the army on me after my return. Bo wasn't too thrilled at the interruption, and I had the impression that she was quite peeved with me still. Some more make-up sex might fix that, provided no one was suicidal enough to interrupt us again. Regretfully, making ourselves presentable didn't include some fun and games in the fresher, so by the time we met Satine and company my mood was less than ideal. That however changed when I saw who was waiting for us. Anakin's presence I did feel before we came anywhere near the ambassador's office, so neither he nor Padme were a surprise. Garm Bel Iblis and an unfamiliar younger man on the other hand ensured that this meeting might actually be worthwhile. A short round of greetings and introductions later cemented that impression. The stranger was Senator Derek Storm from Kuat, and his presence along with the others made this meeting most interesting. Vale, I'll be blunt. Satine glared at me. Your actions, both in the Rim and in front of the Senate, put us all in a tenuous position. Becoming a dictator was your choice, Satine. One I approve of given the situation. For some reason my approval didn't make her feel better. It's not like the Senate left you a better alternative, like throwing you to the Cath hounds? The Chancellor offered me a wintry smile. I half expected something like that. She didn't even try to deny it, and given the audience that was telling about how radically things on Coruscant had changed. Do I want to know what would you have done in such a case? Anakin asked. Whatever it took to get away from Tanab in one piece. That was one answer they should have seen coming. What about the war then? Padme prodded further. What about it? Both sides losing would have been in my best interest if that happened. Make no mistake, at this time, a Republic victory is in my best interests, and it is what's best for my people. Let's be honest, however, I do not have any inherent loyalty to the Republic, and that was before the Senate collectively proved to be an obstructionists' bunch of incompetent and corrupt fools. That was something we should have seen coming from the start, Iblis sighed. You mean you didn't? Anakin looked in confusion at the gathered politicians. He gave such an impression. Padme pointed out. Well, after becoming a general and fighting along some of you, I do have a measure of loyalty and respect for individuals fighting for the Republic and towards my subordinates. The Republic offered me a lot of opportunities, and winning the war for it is in my best interest. However, being loyal to it as an institution. What has been happening on Coruscant since my return from Mandalore ensured that wouldn't be happening. As interesting and depressing this is, we aren't here to discuss Vale's non-existent morality. Satine put them all back on track. I didn't support you because of your moral fiber nor because I approve of your actions, General. I did it because you're possibly our best bet to win this war, or at least not lose it too badly. The reason these senators are here are similar. Padme feels indebted to you for saving Naboo again and again, not to mention that mid-rim alliance you hammered together with Naboo as a leading member. Senator Iblis. I can speak for myself, Chancellor, thank you very much. The Corellian gave me a shrewd look. If the circumstances were different, I would be leading the crowd wanting to lynch you. He grimaced. However, first and foremost, my duty is to Corellia. Each victory you win, every moment you exist as a threat to the Separatists means that my home could be liberated that much sooner and easier. Your very existence means that some of the systems most likely to fight this was to the bitter end will continue to support the Chancellor's administration and war efforts. While Kuat is currently the strongest member of this alliance, we're also the primary target for the Separatists. If they manage to neutralize our industry or worse, take control of our system, they will win the war. I've been instructed by my government to assist and support this alliance to the best of my ability. Senator Storm added. He easily presented himself as my only friend among the politicians, something that wasn't lost to the others. That said, if you continue to pull off stunts like Bothoi, there won't be a republic left to fight this war. We will be too busy fighting a second civil war or watching even more hostile elements in the core to deal with the Separatists. Satine glared at me. Threats would work only so long before we are put in an even more impossible position. Well, given who you all are, it's obvious what you want, and it coincided with what we all need. I smiled at the senators. We need victories, high-profile, visible victories that matter to the people in the core. Like removing the Separatists from Corellia, I nodded at Iblis, pushing them away from easy striking range of Kuat, another nod this time to Storm, and opening communications and supply lines to the Mid-Rim and Naboo. A third nod to Padme. Obi-Wan and the rest of High Command had been busy making that possible, yet here you all are. Obi-Wan is a good man. No matter if the Council kicked him out, he is still a Jedi. For all their misgivings, these nice people come to you because they know you'll get your hands as dirty as it takes to keep their world safe or liberate them. That includes our good Chancellor. Bitterness and sarcasm dripped from Anakin's words. He looked totally unapologetic when his wife slammed her elbow in his ribs and glared murderously at him. I tell it as I see it, Padme. For all high-minded declarations, here we are, aren't we? Satine at least I could understand, especially if she had some heart-to-heart conversations with Kenobi. A full-scale galactic war could break even Jedi who had been trained and prepared for such a conflict, which he certainly wasn't. That bastard Parian was just the most high-profile example alive today. I've seen it happen in the past. The same was true for Saina Sith, who slid firmly under the influence of the dark side under the pressure of the war. Obi-Wan? He was in a position that would immortalize his name as one of the greatest Jedi and generals in history, or utterly break and tarnish his reputation. The others? Storm was clear and cut case. He did what Anara Kuat told him to do, and it seemed that Sash had that woman on a very short leash, something I would be reinforcing once I got to Kuat. Padme and Iblis were more interesting. I've been very vaguely familiar with the Corellian, but our good senator from Naboo? The way her experiences lately changed her was startling. The woman who stood before me today was a very far cry from the idealistic and naive girl I escorted to Rhodia not that long ago. Well then, it's good I come bearing gifts. I gave the gathered politicians my best charming smile, yet they looked most apprehensive. Senator Storm, you and Kuat would be best positioned to make a good use of them. I fished out a data chip and offered it to Satine. She plugged it into the terminal built into the desk, and soon we had a hollow image projected between us. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the silencer. When mounted on a Venator, it is capable of destroying multiple munificents with one shot or crippling a separatist battleship. I believe it is high time we put them in mass production. How long have you had kept this under wraps? Iblis glared accusingly at me. Long enough. It wasn't until now that I was reasonably sure the Republic wouldn't be in a good position to turn on me. I wouldn't be giving you this weapon otherwise. Every time I think you have some redeeming features, Padme muttered darkly. Remind me again, whose Jedi attempted to murder me on multiple occasions and who was debating if would be for the best to issue a kill order with my name on it? I pointedly looked at Satine. The Jedi betrayed the Republic. The Chancellor pointed out, making Anakin scowl. Not all of us. And there are many who would have gladly followed their example if they weren't more afraid of the separatists than from my people and me at the time. I countered. We all know that right now the Republic is an alliance of convenience bound together by self-interests and fear from the separatists and the Sith. And from what I gather, this situation isn't much different from what it was under Palpatine. He merely had the charisma, support and connections to keep the whole rotten mess together by more palpable means. Are we here to discuss the various failings of the Republic? Can't you do that on your own time? Bo interjected. It was funny to see everyone's reactions when the self-proclaimed Mandalorian warrior in the room acted as the adult. There were a few angry looks sent her way, but mostly mortification. Ahem. From what I see, this silencer would be a strong power multiplier. We won't be able to have it built and installed in sufficient numbers to make a decisive difference in the short term. What else do you have to offer, General Vale? Satine asked, drawing on her Chancellor persona. It was quite impressive too. She was all professional now, and there were no traces of her real feelings that could be seen unless you were a Force adept. Our friends and enemies alike are terrified of what I would do next. I suggest we play on that fear. While the separatists are concentrating their forces, preparing for the blow at Corellia, we're going to break the stalemate in the east. Mandalore. Iblis frowned. Give us one strategic reason why we should release substantial forces for that theater of operations. Mandalore will be both a trap and a stepping stone. We will let the Bothan spynet learn the truth, that after relieving Mandalore, I'll be leading an offensive in separatist space and bring their worlds to their knees. A few moments of stunned silence followed until Anakin nodded. You want to draw as much of the enemy fleets in the quadrant as possible in one grand battle and annihilate them. Just like at Geonosis but bigger, turn their trap back on them.